Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. I do want to talk about what ended up being a very consequential game in the Big East, okay? So we've talked a decent amount of Big East basketball. St. John's running away with the league. UConn has certainly had peaks and flows, ebbs and valleys over the course of the season. But really, and we'll talk about this in a minute, UConn's resume, if you actually look at it, some really good wins headlined by the Marquette game on the road a few weeks ago, but a couple not very good losses. And I'll say this, UConn quietly sort of needed a big game against Creighton on Tuesday night. The issue is, and I know what you'll say is, well, it's Creighton, whatever. But it's like, if you follow college, if you're a basketball diehard, UConn has actually been the team that has actually given UConn the most trouble in the Big East is Creighton. Coming into this game, since UConn rejoined the Big East in 2020-2021 season, you know, UConn is 2-8 against Creighton. The stat that I use, UConn last year went 37-3. Their only loss at full strength, they had 3 losses. One was to Kansas. Steph Castle didn't play. Steph Castle ended up being a lottery pick. The second loss at Seton Hall, a game where Donovan Clingan got hurt midway through, did not return. The only loss where they had all 5 starters in the lineup was at Creighton. So Creighton is a team that, for whatever reason, seems to have UConn's number. Well, they didn't on Tuesday night, at least not when it mattered. They jumped out to an early lead and were in control going into the second half and maybe partway through the second half. But UConn rallies. UConn gets the 70-66 win. This is the first win UConn has had against Creighton since they rejoined the Big East, and it is because of one man and one man only. Liam McNeeley, the freshman. Remember during portal season when Liam McNeeley decommitted from Indiana, we kept talking about this kid. Who is this kid? And Mark Pope was going after him, and John Calipari was going after. I know John Calipari just was dying to get this kid. Well, UConn ended up getting him. He's been in and out of the lineup with an injury, missed basically all of January. Well, he comes back, and he has a game for the ages, 38 points. UConn gets the victory. As I said, the first win for UConn ever at Creighton. This one is big. We'll talk about it in a minute. But you know what we got to talk about first? Dan freaking Hurley. So first of all, this video popped up after the game. Producer Matt showed Dan Hurley on the court following the victory. That was Dan Hurley, a typical Dan Hurley fashion, showing the crowd, you know, saying, just thanking the crowd for showing up, saying, bye, 2 rings. The insinuation, of course, being that UConn is the 2-time national champion. By the way, that was via Grace Boyles of one of the local news stations. Then here was Dan Hurley talking about, frankly, why he did that. But I think as importantly, the significance of this win for UConn, because it actually was a big one.
I just wish there was more people still here. You know, that was the only thing, because when I've gotten my butt kicked in here, minus the COVID year, which we would all like to forget, where I think this was the only place we came to that actually had fans that year. You know, but I've obviously had to walk off unceremoniously, you know, just crushed by the crowd and, you know, cursed at and you know, but I don't really, as long as they're not leaning over the rail and getting in my face. I mean, I think it's what makes college sports so much better, or college basketball so much better than any other type of basketball is. You know, you got your, although the home fans here didn't get the win that they wanted, but they got a show. I mean, they got an intense game with, you know, with so much passion and a life or death struggle. You know, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, that was very gratifying. I waved at some people, but I just wish that there was more of them still left.
That was Dan Hurley in the manner that only Dan Hurley can. I wish there were more of them. There's usually more when their team wins. So listen, Dan Hurley, I think, actually did a very good job of explaining, that this has become, I'll even say this. I'll give credit to my buddy Jared Kotler, who does a very popular UConn basketball podcast. And he basically said, CT Scoreboard, by the way, is the name of that podcast. He basically said, he's like, Creighton has sort of become UConn's rival in the Big East. Historically, it was maybe Providence. Maybe in the future, it will be St. John's, depending on how long Rick Pitino stays. But Creighton has kind of become UConn's rival with the struggles. And so I bring it up because they needed a win. They get a win. And listen, I know when Dan Hurley goes viral after a game, that's always going to be a story. But as you can see on the ticker, the story of the game was Liam freaking McNeeley as well. Okay. So Liam McNeeley, to me, I mean, listen, again, we talked about him so much in the spring, the impact that he had, the importance that he would have on this program. And he was great early on. But like I've told you, he's missed over a month with a sprained ankle, badly sprained ankle. He came back on Friday against St. John's. He looked okay. Well, this was, I can't say it's the best game he's ever played, period, because he's played a lot of big games. This is the best game he's ever played as a UConn Husky. 38 points. What's crazy is 9 points to open the game. He had 23 at the half, and then he had 6 straight points at one point that really kind of swung the game. Back-to-back threes. UConn takes the lead, and they never really relinquished it after that. And so this was the game of a lifetime for Liam McNeeley. I think what's also important, it's a game that really sort of mattered to UConn. Listen, I didn't want to be a fatalist and too negative and this and that. But listen, if UConn had lost this game, UConn's NCAA tournament resume probably isn't quite as strong as I think a lot of people think. Listen, couple great wins, most notably at Marquette. But prior to Tuesday night, first of all, you have a really bad loss against Dayton in Maui. That is a quad 3 loss, I believe, as of right now. Colorado is one of the worst teams in the Big 12. You lost to them in Maui as well. And you've kind of been okay in the Big East, but you haven't been great. Now, part of it is you did not have Liam McNeeley, but you have a loss at Villanova. You have a loss at Xavier. Those aren't bad losses, but those are games that you would have liked to have. And then, oh, by the way, the out-of-conference schedule just really has not held up the way that you thought. You won at Texas, but we just talked about Texas a minute ago. Texas is 15-10 right now, probably going to miss the NCAA tournament. You beat Gonzaga, but Gonzaga's good, but they're struggling a little bit, and they're fine, but they're okay. Baylor is struggling a little bit. So the out-of-conference resume has not held up the way that you had hoped. The Big East, frankly, is down, and you lose this game, I think you're probably, still in okay shape for the NCAA tournament because you still got 2 games against Seton Hall. Most of your biggest remaining games are at home, Villanova at home, Marquette at home, etc. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that you'd be on the bubble going into Selection Sunday. But you get this win. It's a big one. And I think what it proves to me is that you have real momentum now. Now, UConn all year, it's been up and down with the momentum. But also, you not only have real momentum, but you have a real star. And it's so funny because the one thing about UConn all season long, kind of as UConn has been kind of up and down, people keep saying, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong? And especially over the last month, you could point to a lot of different things, a lot of different players that need to step up. But what you also cannot deny is that they're a different team when they don't have a lottery pick in their lineup in Liam McNeeley. And so to me, that's what I kept going back to was let's see what they look like with a full roster. Let's see what they look like when you have literally your best player back in the lineup and playing to his capabilities. How would, Duke be without Cooper Flagg? I mean, I know Auburn won a couple games without Janai Broome, but you don't want him out for a month and a half. And that's the impact that Liam McNeeley has on this team. And that is why this win was so important. And so credit to UConn. This was a game that they absolutely had to have. It was a game that they got. Liam McNeeley was the difference. Liam McNeeley was the X factor. Liam McNeeley was the reason that they won this game. And listen, I just think if you're UConn, I think you have to feel really good. The one thing I will say, which is going to be interesting, the most recent bracketologies have had them as like an 8-9 seed, which sounds crazy. My only concern with UConn, I just don't know if there's enough it's kind of a positive and a negative. I don't know if there's enough great wins to have in the Big East to really, really, really kind of impact your tournament seeding. Listen, I think if they basically won out, if you win at St. John's, if you take no bad losses, if you win the Big East tournament, then yeah, maybe you're talking like a 4 seed, a 3 seed. But realistically, I think this is like a 5 or a 6 seed. Now, again, it would have been much worse if you didn't win this game. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I think for UConn, it's kind of what we were talking about with Kentucky a minute ago. It's not about, hey, you have to be great and you have to be this and you have to be that and da-da-da-da. It's like, just make sure you're healthy and try to go on a little run here. Like I said, for UConn, the schedule breaks a little bit nicely for them. They do have Seton Hall at home Seton Hall on the road on Saturday. That's the worst team in the Big East, followed by a home game against Villanova before St. John's in about 11 days from now. So I guess that would be, is that a third? I guess that's a Saturday. I guess it's a Saturday. But you got 2 games to get right. You have to win them. But from the UConn side of things, I just think it's important that you got some momentum, that you got this win. And again, if you can get some momentum, I don't think you're getting a 2 or a 3 seed. But imagine being somebody that's a 3 seed and you get UConn as a 6 in your bracket. By the way, UConn is currently the 8 seed in Lenardi's bracket in the East. Imagine Duke having to play UConn in the second round. This team is getting better. It was because of Liam McNeeley. We have to give him credit. But this game was so much bigger than I think a lot of people realize, and UConn gets the win.